Hello, welcome back to the stream. It is another Harry Potter stream, and we are continuing on with our reading of Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix. Wait, the Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't know why I want to say Order of Phoenix today. I just love that one. Okay, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't know if they've released the Order of Phoenix yet in the illustrated version. They recently, I saw that they released the Goblet of Fire, but I don't know if they've released the others. Hello. So, anyway, welcome Markness Falls. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome everybody. We are going to be continuing on. Before we do so, we'll just review what happened in the last chapter. So the last chapter was the Boggart in the Wardrobe, chapter 7. And it was basically all of the students' first class with their new dark arts professor, Mr. Lupin, Professor Lupin. And he helped them learn how to defeat Boggarts. And Harry was supposed to have a Boggart, but he stopped him. Like, Dr. Lupin. Why do I want to say doctor? I don't know. My brain is not working today. Professor Lupin stopped Harry Potter from trying to defeat the Boggart and stepped in front of him. And Harry was like, why did he do that? So only Harry and Hermione did not get to practice on the Boggart, which just seems very weird. Anyway. Markness Falls redeemed Extreme Dance. Since we're not playing Just Dance right now, you'll have to wait until we switch games, which will be on Saturday. I should probably put that in the description of that one. Can you switch your song requests to either Paramore or Flyleaf? No, I don't have those ones on my singing list, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I have those on my singing list. I don't even know how to sing those ones. I don't even know the words to those songs. I don't even know what they are. Okay, so I can do the song requests pretty easily, but I can't do the Just Dance request because it requires setting up my Nintendo Switch and my Elgato and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, Kansas. We can do that one before we start reading, if you'd like. So anyway, Boggart. Harry Potter didn't get to fight him. Snape was really mean and tried to kill Neville's toad, but he didn't succeed because Hermione helped Neville, and Snape was not happy about that. Snape is like even meaner in the books than he is in the movie. And nastier. Excuse me while I drink my witch's brew. Alright. So we have a song request from Markness Falls that we will do, and then we will get to our reading of the story. Let's prepare. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. All right. I should have like a cool background for karaoke or something. That would be really cool. I don't know what it would be, but let us bring it up. Okay. All right. Bringing up the song now. Karaoke. Gotta specify that it is karaoke. feel like this is a super long song. It's a super long song. I might have to end it early if it's one of those songs that just says the chorus 20 million times, because that gets boring. But we'll see how long I make it. Okay. They're all like 5 minutes long. All right. Carry on, my son. Carry on. What do you think this song is about? Like, what is he trying to get his son to carry on? And why is his son so wayward? What happened to make him so wayward? There's a story behind this, and I want to know what it is, but I don't have any idea. Okay. Let's pause the fantasy background music. That will really clash. And it won't sound beautiful. There we go. We got our karaoke. Okay. All right, let's turn the volume up. Let me know if the volume sounds interesting. You like the emotes? Good, I'm glad. Only sing half. There's a guy on TikTok singing the comments? What? Singing what comments? Okay. What's that thing that they do from High School Musical? Okay. Can I hear it? Can you hear it? Oh, there it goes. Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. It was super loud. Hopefully not too loud. Hopefully your eardrums aren't bleeding. Guitar break. Playing my guitar with my rock hands. Once I rose above the noise and confusion, just to get a glimpse beyond this illusion. I was soaring ever higher, but I flew too high. Though my eyes could see, I still was a blind man. Though my mind could think, I still was a madman. I hear the voices when I'm dreaming. I can hear them say, carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. This song is so epic. Masquerading as a man with a reason. My charade is the event of the season. And if I claim to be a wise man, it surely means that I don't know. On a stormy sea of moving emotion, tossed about like I'm a ship on the ocean, I set a course for winds of fortune, but hear the voices say, carry on my wayward son, there'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest, don't you cry no more. No! No! Don't cry no more. Yeah! I just know this song is the song they play on Supernatural every time right before the finale of the season, and it's amazing. It was so epic. I don't know if you ever watched Supernatural, Markness Falls, but whenever they played the song and did a recap of the season, it was so cool. Yeah. I'm just picturing Sam and Dean killing some demons and hanging out with Crowley. Carry on, you will always remember. Carry on, nothing equals the splendor. Now your life's no longer empty. Surely heaven waits for you. Carry on, my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. Bam, 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 bam. Man, this would be so cool to see in concert. Just like, it's pretty much all guitar solos, this song. It's beautiful. No more. Bam. Made it to the end of the song. We're champions. Champions. And it still goes with the guitar. Wow, that was beautiful. That was really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that request, the beauty that you've brought us on the stream today. It was really, really nice. Okay. Now we will switch back. Oh, there's a Gimli sighting. Hello, Gimli. He's off by the Twitch pillow. Switch back to our fantasy music. It's so quiet comparatively. Okay. All right. Look at all those rockin' emotes there. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. And we get 10 points for Gryffindor. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you for that. That was a great little break before our book. And now, without further ado, Chapter 8, Flight of the Fat Lady. Let's make sure our levels have returned to the appropriate. Thank you for that. That was a great little break before our book. Yeah, that sounds good. Not too loud. Okay, not too quiet. Flight of the Fat Lady. There we go. All right. You know, just for fun, let's read the last sentence of the previous chapter just to get us into this next chapter. All right, so the last sentence of the last chapter, or the last paragraph, so that actually the last sentence makes sense. Okay. That was the best defense against the dark arts lesson we've ever had, wasn't it? Said Ron excitedly as they made their way back to the classroom to get their bags. He seems a very good teacher, said Hermione approvingly. But I wish I could have a turn with the boggart. What would it have been for you? Said Ron, sniggering. A piece of homework that only got 9 out of 10. Ha ha! Ron, that's such a knee slapper. That Ron. All right, Chapter 8. Flight of the Fat Lady. In no time at all, defense against the dark arts had become most people's favorite class. Only Draco Malfoy and his gang of Slytherins had anything bad to say about Professor Lupin. Look at the state of his robes, Malfoy would say in a loud whisper as Professor Lupin passed. He dresses like our house elf. What house elf? You don't have a house elf? Because Harry took him away from you last year. He must have got a new one. Of course, they couldn't stand. They probably had like 20,000 house elves, actually. All right. But no one else cared that Professor Lupin's robes were patched and frayed. His next few lessons were just as interesting as the first. After boggarts, they studied redcaps, nasty little goblin-like creatures that lurked wherever there had been bloodshed. In the dungeons of castles and the potholes of deserted battlefields, waiting to bludgeon those who had got lost. From redcaps, they moved on to kappas, creepy water dwellers that looked like scaly monkeys with webbed hands itching to strangle unwitting waders in their ponds. Harry only wished he was as happy as some of his other classes. Worst of all was potions. Snape was in a particularly vindictive mood these days, and no one was in any doubt why. The story of the boggart assuming Snape's shape and the way that Neville had dressed it in grandmother's clothes had traveled through the school like wildfire. Snape didn't seem to find it funny. His eyes flashed menacingly at the very mention of Professor Lupin's name, and he was bullying Neville worse than ever. Harry was also growing to dread the hours he spent in Professor Trelawney's stifling tower room, deciphering lopsided shapes and symbols, trying to ignore the way Professor Trelawney's enormous eyes filled with tears every time she looked at him. He couldn't like Professor Trelawney, even though she was treated with respect, bordering on reverence by many of the class. Parvati Patil and Lavender Brown had taken to haunting Professor Trelawney's tower room at lunchtimes, and always returned with annoyingly superior looks on their faces, as though they knew things that the others didn't. They also started using hushed voices whenever they spoke to Harry, as though he was on his deathbed. Nobody really liked Care of Magical Creatures, which, after the action-packed first class, had become extremely dull. Sad. Hagrid seemed to have lost his confidence. They were now spending lesson after lesson after lesson, learning how to look after flobberworms, which had to be some of the most boring creatures in existence. Why would anyone bother looking after them? Said Ron, after yet another hour of poking shredded lettuce down the flobberworms' slimy throats. At the start of October, however, Harry had something else to occupy him. Something so enjoyable it made up for his unsatisfactory classes. The Quidditch season was approaching, and Oliver Wood, captain of the Gryffindor team, called a meeting one Thursday evening to discuss tactics for the new season. There were 7 people on the Quidditch team, 3 chasers, whose job it was to score goals by putting the quaffle, a red football-sized ball, through one of the 50-foot high hoops at each end of the pitch. 2 beaters, who were equipped with heavy bats to repel the bludgers. 2 heavy black balls, which zoomed around trying to attack the players. A keeper, who defended the goalpost, and the seeker, who had the hardest job of all, that of catching the golden snitch. A tiny winged walnut-sized ball whose capture ended the game and earned the Seekers team an extra 150 points. Oliver Wood was a burly 17-year-old, now in his 7th and final year at Hogwarts. There was a quiet sort of desperation in his voice as he addressed his 6 fellow team members in the chilly changing rooms on the edge of the darkening Quidditch pitch. "This is our last chance. My chance to win the Quidditch Cup," he told them, striding up and down in front of them. "I'll be leaving at the end of this year. I'll never get another shot at it. Gryffindor haven't won for 7 years now. Okay, so we've had the worst luck in the world. Injuries, then after the tournament getting called off last year." Wood swallowed, as though the memory still brought a lump to his throat. "But we also know we've got the best ready team in the school," he said, punching a fist into his other hand, the old manic glint back in his eye. "We've got 3 superb chasers." Wood pointed at Alicia Spinnet, Angela Johnson, and Katie Bell. "We've got 2 unbeatable beaters." "Stop it, Oliver, you're embarrassing us," said Fred and George Weasley together, pretending to blush. "And we've got a seeker who's never failed to win us a match," Wood rumbled, glaring at Harry with a kind of furious pride. "And me," he added as an afterthought. "We think you're very good too, Oliver," said George. "Crackin' keeper," said Fred. "Point is," Wood went on, resuming his pacing, "the Quidditch Cup should have had a name on it the last 2 years. Ever since Harry joined the team, I thought that was in the bag, but we haven't got it, and this year's last chance we'll get to finally see our name on the thing." Wood spoke so dejectedly that even Fred and George looked sympathetic. "Oliver, this year's our year," said Fred. "We'll do it, Oliver," said Angelina. "Definitely," said Harry. Full of determination, the team started training sessions, 3 evenings a week. The weather was getting colder and wetter, the nights darker, but no amount of mud, wind, or rain could tarnish Harry's wonderful vision of finally winning the huge silver Quidditch Cup. Harry returned to the Gryffindor common room one evening after training, cold and stiff, but pleased with the way practice had gone, to find the room buzzing excitedly. I do miss Quidditch. They didn't have very much Quidditch going on in the movies. There was quite a lot. I mean, J.K. Rowling created an entire game. She made up this entire game that doesn't exist. I mean, it's pretty inventive. She was so detailed with this world she created, you know? So detailed, down to the point that there's an actual game that people play sometimes in real life. Obviously, they don't have flying broomsticks, but they pretend. And it's enough rules to actually play the game. So, good for her. Quite impressive. Unfortunately, they didn't get to have as much Quidditch. They did include it, you know, a fair amount, but not as much as it is in the books, obviously. All right. So much had to be cut from the books when you turned it into a movie because there's just so much going on. It would have taken forevers. All right. So why are we excited? What's happening in the common room here? What's happened? He asked Ron and Hermione, who were sitting in the 2 best chairs by the fireside and completing some stars charts for astronomy. First Hogmeads weekend, said Ron, pointing at a notice that had appeared on the battered old notice board. End of October, Halloween. However they say Halloween. How do they say it? Halloween. I don't know. Excellent, said Fred, who had followed Harry through the porthole key. Porthole? There was no key in that sentence. I don't know why I added that. I just really wanted there to be a key. Okay. I need to visit Zonko's. I'm nearly out of stink pellets. Harry threw himself into a chair beside Ron, his high spirits ebbing away. Hermione seemed to read his mind. Harry, I'm sure you'll be able to go the next time, she said. They're bound to catch Black soon. He's been sighted once already. Black's not fool enough to try anything in Hogsmeade, said Ron. Ask McGonagall if you can go this time, Harry. The next one might not be for ages. Ron, said Hermione, Harry's supposed to stay in school. He can't be the only third year left behind, said Ron. Ask McGonagall. Go on, Harry. Yeah, I think I will, said Harry, making up his mind. Hermione opened her mouth to argue, but at the moment Crookshanks leaped lightly onto her lap. A large dead spider was dangling from his mouth. Well, that's gross. If you guys have cats, do they ever bring you like little presents of dead creatures? And if they do, it's usually like mice or lizards, right? Not spiders. What kind of cat eats spiders? That's just wrong. That's just wrong. Okay. There's a picture of Crookshanks. Luckily, it does not show us the spider. Okay. Because I would not want to see that. You know what I mean? Would not want to see that. All right. Does he have to eat that in front of us? Said Ron, scowling. Clever Crookshanks. Did you catch that all by yourself? Said Hermione. That's a weird response, Hermione. Crookshanks slowly chewed up the spider. Ew. His yellow eyes fixed insolently on Ron. Just keep him over there, that's all, said Ron irritably, turning back to his star chart. I've got Scabbers asleep in my bag. Harry yawned. Oh, he really wanted to go to bed, but he still had his own star chart to complete. He pulled his bag towards him, took out parchment, ink, and quill, and started work. You can copy mine if you like, said Ron, labeling his last star with a flourish and shoving the chart towards Harry. Hermione, who disapproved of copying, pursed her lips but didn't say anything. Crookshanks was still staring unblinkingly at Ron, flicking the end of his bushy tail. Then, without warning, he pounced. Oi! Ron roared, seizing his bag, as Crookshanks sank 4 sets of claws deeply into it and began tearing ferociously. Get off, you stupid animal! Ron tried to pull the bag away from Crookshanks, but Crookshanks clung on, spitting and slashing. Ron, don't hurt him, squealed Hermione. The whole common room was watching. Ron whirled the bag around, and Crookshanks still clinging to it, and Scabbers came flying out the top. Catch that cat! Ron yelled, as Crookshanks freed himself from the remnants of the bag, sprang over the table, and chased after the terrified Scabbers. Cats are so bad at walking through cobwebs. Cats, man. There's the rat. Very lovely. I'm gonna turn off this light behind me and see if that helps with our... Like, feels like it's too bright. Might be too dark now, but we'll find out. Okay. Is that too dark? Can you still see me? Okay. George Weasley made a lunge for Crookshanks but missed. Scabbers streaked through 20 pairs of legs and shot beneath an old chest of drawers. Crookshanks skidded to a halt, crouched low on his bandy legs, and started making furious swipes beneath the chest of drawers with his front paw. Ron and Hermione hurried over. Hermione grabbed Crookshanks around the middle and heaved him away. Ron threw himself onto his stomach and with great difficulty pulled Scabbers out by the tail. Look at him, he said furiously to Hermione, dangling Scabbers in front of her. He's skin and bone! You keep that cat away from him! Crookshanks doesn't understand it's wrong, said Hermione, her voice shaking. All cats chase rats, Ron. There's something funny about that animal, said Ron, who was trying to persuade a frantically wiggling Scabbers back into his pocket. It heard me say that Scabbers was in my bag. Oh, what rubbish, said Hermione impatiently. Crookshanks could smell him. Ron, how else do you think? That cat's got it in for Scabbers, said Ron, ignoring the people around him, who were starting to giggle. And Scabbers was here first, and he's ill. Ron marched through the common room and out of sight up the stairs to the boys' dormitories. Ron was still in a bad mood with Hermione the next day. He barely talked to her all through herbology, even though he, Harry, and Hermione were working together on the same puffapod. How's Scabbers? Hermione asked timidly as they stripped fat pink pods from the plants and emptied the shining beans into a wooden pail. He's hiding at the bottom of my bed shaking, said Ron angrily, missing the pail and scattering beans over the greenhouse floor. Careful, Weasley, careful, said Professor Sprout, as the beans burst into bloom before their very eyes. See, you really miss a lot of this in the movies, this like bickering between Ron and Hermione. I mean, they definitely show that, but you miss a lot of it. There's so much of these book series that I just was like annoyed at Ron and Hermione. I was like, you guys just shut up. You're so annoying. They were so bickery and so annoying and mean to each other and just like stop it. And you miss a lot of that in the book series. Or the book series in the movies. But it's good. It's good in the book. And also this whole Crookshanks thing. Like, do you think that Crookshanks really understood that the rat was in the bag? Did he really hear Ron say that? Or is he a cat and could smell the rat? What do you think? So I just thought that was interesting. And a question that I don't think is ever answered in the series. I don't think they ever tell us if there's something wrong with Crookshanks. I think that's just what Ron thinks in this moment, so. Anyway. They had Transfiguration next. Harry, who had resolved to ask Professor McGonagall after the lesson whether he could go to Hogsmeade with the rest, joined the queue outside the classroom, trying to decide how he was going to argue his case. He was distracted, however, by a disturbance at the front of the line. Lavender Brown seemed to be crying. Parvati had her arm around her and was explaining something to Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas, who were looking very serious. "What's the matter, Lavender?" said Hermione anxiously, as she, Harry, and Ron went to join the group. "She's got a letter from home this morning," Parvati whispered. "It's her rabbit, Binky. He's been killed by a fox." "Oh," said Hermione. "I'm sorry, Lavender." "I should have known," said Lavender tragically. "You know what day it is? The 16th of October. That thing you're dreading, it will happen on the 16th of October. Remember? She said she was right. She was right. The whole class was gathered around Lavender now. Seamus shook his head seriously. Hermione hesitated. Then she said, You were dreading Binky being killed by a fox?" "Well, not necessarily by a fox," said Lavender, looking up at Hermione with streaming eyes. "But I was obviously dreading him dying, wasn't I?" "Oh," said Hermione. She paused again. "Then was Binky an old rabbit?" "No," sobbed Lavender. He was only a baby." Parvati tightened her arm around Lavender's shoulders. "But then why would you dread him dying?" said Hermione. Parvati glared at her. "Well, look at it logically," said Hermione, turning to the rest of the group. "I mean, Binky didn't even die today, did he, Lavender? Lavender just got the news today." Lavender wailed loudly. "Ah!" "And she can't have been dreading it because it's come as a real shock." "Don't mind Hermione, Lavender," said Ron loudly. "She doesn't think about other people's pets that much." Wow. Imagine an emote with you dressed as Harry's Hermione. That would be really cool. I wanted to get a emote of me dressed as a witch, but I ran out of emote spots. Okay. Professor McGonagall opened the classroom door at that moment, which was perhaps lucky. Hermione and Ron were looking daggers at each other, and when they got into class, they seated themselves either side of Harry and didn't talk to each other all lesson. Harry still hadn't decided what he was going to say to Professor McGonagall when the bell rang at the end of the lesson. But it was she who brought up the subject of Hogsmeade first. "One moment, please," she called as the class... Interesting. Work phrasing of that sentence. That sentence is kind of weird. Hold on one second. By the way, now that I've turned off this lighting, I feel like maybe it's too dark. What do you think? Because I feel like my camera acts strange in darkness, and it doesn't like to I don't know, be smooth. It's too dark. It's like not very smooth. Does that make sense? Okay. What? Dog. Oh, I'm kind of weird. That's okay. We all are. We all are. All right. Where were we? McGonagall was doing something and there was a weird sentence. Where did it come from? Hermione really doesn't want Professor Trelawney to be right about anything. She thinks that she is a bunch of hogwash. All right. But probably not the best time to make your point, Hermione. Hermione was a lot more annoying in the books, too. Both Ron and Hermione were. And at one point, Harry gets his turn at being annoying. So, you know, they're all a bit annoying. Let's just say they're all a bit annoying. All right. So Harry is still going to talk to Professor McGonagall. They seated themselves, the bell rang, blah, blah, blah. Okay. "One moment, please," she called as the class made to leave. Oh, I now know. As the class made to leave. Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. It's just not very common phrase in the US. Like, it's not very common in the US for us to be like, "Oh, I was making to leave." That's not a common thing that we say. Or, "Oh, yes, the class made to leave, but then the professor stopped them." Like, that's not a thing that we were saying, that we would say. We would say, like, the class was about to leave, or the class started to leave, and then the professor called them. Just thought that was interesting, because when I read that, I was like, did I read that sentence right? But then I realized that is a common phrase, like, in the UK. Okay. Alright, anyway, so the class made to leave and McGonagall said, "As you're all in my house, you should hand Hogsmeade permission forms to me before Halloween. No form, no visiting the village, so don't forget." Neville put up his hand. "Please, Professor, I think I've lost..." "Your grandmother sent me yours directly, Longbottom," said Professor McGonagall. "She seemed to think it was safer." "Well, that's all. You may leave." "Ask her now," Ron hissed at Harry. "Oh, but..." Hermione began. "Go for it, Harry," said Ron stubbornly. Harry waited for the rest of class to disappear, then headed nervously for Professor McGonagall's desk. Hold on, my dog is trying to kill other dogs through the screens. Be right back. dogs were harmed in the making of this video. They were just viciously barked at for no reason by my dog, who likes to pretend that he's the size of a Great Dane, even though he is the size of a large cat. You are silly, puppy. You're so silly. He's down here. You can't see him now, but he is down here. Anyway, so then a wild pack of dogs viciously attacked the whole class and they all died. The end. Just kidding. Okay. Anyway. Yes, Potter? Harry took a deep breath. Professor, my aunt and uncle, forgot to sign my form, he said. Professor McGonagall looked over her square spectacles at him, but didn't say anything. So, do you think it would be alright, I mean, would it be okay if I go to Hogsmeade? Professor McGonagall looked down and began shuffling papers on her desk. I'm afraid not, Potter, she said. You heard what I said. No form, no visiting the village. That's the rule. But, Professor, my aunt and uncle, you know, they're muggles. They don't really understand about Hogwarts forms and stuff, Harry said, while Ron egged him on with vigorous nods. If you said I could go... But I don't say so, said Professor McGonagall, standing up and piling her papers neatly in a drawer. The form clearly states that the parent or guardian must give permission. She turned to look at him with an odd expression on her face. Was it pity? I'm sorry, Potter, but that's my final word. I really want to get better at doing McGonagall's voice, but it's... I have to, like, listen to it more, I guess, and practice it. 10 points for Gryffindor! Yeah. I'm sorry, Potter, but that's my final word. You'd better hurry, or you'll be late for your next lesson. There was nothing to be done. Ron called Professor McGonagall a lot of names, which greatly annoyed Hermione. That's rude, Ron. Real rude. Hermione assumed an all-for-the-best expression that made Ron even angrier. And Harry had to endure everyone in the class talking loudly and happily about what they were going to do first once they got into Hogsmeade. Wow, that is like the worst thing for a kid, isn't it? You know? When everyone is going on the field trip or whatever and you can't go because your parents didn't sign your form or because they didn't want to pay the money or for religious reasons. Sorry. All right. Anyway, so kids are talking about it. It sucks for Harry. It's very sad. It's very sad for Harry indeed. Yes, very, very sad. Anyway. There's always the feast, said Ron in an effort to cheer Harry up. You know, the Halloween feast in the evening. Yeah, said Harry gloomily. Great. The Halloween feast was always good, but it would taste a lot better if he was coming to it after a day in Hogsmeade with everyone else. Nothing anyone said made him feel any better about being left behind. Dean Thomas, who was good with a quill, had offered to forge Uncle Vernon's signature on the form, but as Harry already told Professor McGonagall he hadn't had it signed, that was no good. Yeah, Harry, you shouldn't have gone with that. Shouldn't have gone with that. It wasn't even a good excuse either. Oh, they forgot to sign the form. And I can't send a magic letter to them because reasons. Let me go. Alright, so you played yourself, Harry. You could have just forged the signature. That's what good kids do. Ron half-heartedly suggested the invisibility cloak. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. But Hermione stamped on that one, reminding Ron what Dumbledore had told them about the Dementors being able to see through them. Percy had what were possibly the least helpful words of comfort. They make a fuss about Hogsmeade, but I assure you, Harry, it's not all it's cracked up to be, he said seriously. All right, the sweet shop's rather good, but Zonko's joke shop is frankly dangerous, and yes, the shrieking shack's always worth a visit, but really, Harry, apart from that, you're not missing anything. On Halloween morning, Harry awoke with the rest and went down to breakfast feeling thoroughly depressed, though doing his best to act normally, as we human folks do, and wizard folks. Yes, R.I.P. indeed. We'll bring you lots of sweets back from Honeydukes, said Hermione, looking desperately sorry for him. Yeah, loads, said Ron. He and Hermione had finally forgotten their squabble about Crookshanks in the face of Harry's disappointment. Good, because they have literally no other friends to hang out with since Harry's not going. Don't worry about me, said Harry in what he hoped was an offhand voice. I'll see you at the feast. Have a good time. He accompanied them to the entrance hall where Filch the caretaker was standing inside the front doors, checking off names against a long list, peering suspiciously into every face and making sure that no one was sneaking out who shouldn't be going. Staying here, Potter, said Malfoy, who was standing in line with Crabbe and Goyle. Scared of passing the Dementors? I'm hilarious. Harry ignored him and made his solitary way up the marble staircase, through the deserted corridors, and back to the Gryffindor Tower. Password, said the fat lady, jerking out of a doze. Fortuna Major, said Harry listlessly. The portrait swung open and he climbed through the hole into the common room. It was full of chattering first and second years, and a few older students who had obviously visited Hogsmeade so often that the novelty had worn off. Harry! Hi, Harry! It was Colin Creevey, a second year who was deeply in awe of Harry and never missed an opportunity to speak to him. Good old Colin Creevey. Aren't you going to Hogsmeade, Harry? Why not? Hey! Colin looked eagerly around at his friends. You can come and sit with us if you like, Harry. No thanks, Colin. Well, you're too good for Colin's friends? What, Harry? It's not like you have anything better to do. Harry wasn't in the mood to have a lot of people staring avidly at the scar on his forehead. Yeah, well, fair enough. I've got to go to the library. Got to get some work done. After that, he had no choice but to turn right around and head back out of the portrait hole. Well, you played yourself again, Harry. What was the point of waking me? Oh, wait, sorry, this is incorrect voice. What was the point of waking me up? The fat lady called grumpily after him as he walked away. Harry wandered dispiritedly towards the library, but halfway there he changed his mind. He didn't feel like working. He turned around and came face to face with Filch, who had obviously just seen off the last of the Hogsmeade visitors. What are you doing? Filch snarled suspiciously. Nothing, said Harry truthfully. Nothing? Peh! Spat Filch, his jowls quivering unpleasantly. A likely story! Sneaking around on your own. Why aren't you in Hogsmeade buying stink pellets and belched powder and whizzing worms like the rest of your nasty little friends? Harry shrugged. Well, get back to your common room where you belong, snapped Filch, and he stood glaring until Harry had passed out of sight. But Harry didn't go back to the common room. He climbed a staircase, thinking vaguely of visiting the owlry to see Hedwig, and was walking along another corridor when a voice from inside one of the rooms said, Harry? Harry doubled back to see who had spoken and met Professor Lupin, looking around his office door. What are you doing? Said Lupin, in a very different voice from Filch. Where are Ron and Hermione? Hogsmeade, said Harry, in a would-be casual voice. Ah, said Lupin. He considered Harry for a moment. Why don't you come in? I've just taken delivery of a Grindylow for our next lesson. A what? Said Harry. He followed Lupin into his office. In the corner stood a very large tank of water. A sickly green creature with sharp little horns had its face pressed against the glass, pulling faces and flexing its long, spindly fingers. Water demon, said Lupin, surveying the Grindylow thoughtfully. We shouldn't have much difficulty with him, not after the kappas. The trick is to break his grip. You notice the abnormally long fingers? Strong, but very brittle. The Grindylow bared its green teeth and then buried itself into a tangled weed in the corner. Cup of tea? Lupin said, looking around for his kettle. I was just thinking of making one. All right, said Harry awkwardly. Lupin tapped the kettle with his wand and a blast of steam issued suddenly from the spout. Sit down, said Lupin, taking the lid off the dusty tin. I've only got tea bags, I'm afraid, but I dare say you've had enough of tea leaves. Harry looked at him. Lupin's eyes were twinkling. How do you know about that? Harry asked. Professor McGonagall told me, said Lupin, passing Harry a chipped mug of tea. You're not worried, are you? No, said Harry. He thought for a moment of telling Lupin about the dog he'd seen in Magnolia Crescent, but decided not to. He didn't want Lupin to think he was a coward, especially since Lupin already seemed to think he couldn't cope with a boggart. Reading this book again, you just think about all the things you know that are gonna happen with this teacher and with all these people and all these situations, and it just is very delightful for me. But I will not talk about it in case others have not read it. But I'll just tell you it's very delightful. Just remember these beautiful moments in the beginning. Okay. Something of Harry's thoughts seemed to have shown on his face, because Lupin said, Anything worrying you, Harry? No, Harry lied. He drank a bit of tea and watched the Grindylow brandishing a fist at him. Yes, he said suddenly, putting his tea down on Lupin's desk. You know that day we fought the boggart? Yes, said Lupin slowly. Why didn't you let me fight it? Said Harry abruptly. Lupin raised his eyebrows. I would have thought that was obvious. Harry, he said, sounding surprised. Harry, who had expected Lupin to deny that he'd done any such thing, was taken aback. Why? He said again. Well, said Lupin, frowning slightly, I assumed that if the boggart faced you, it would assume the shape of Lord Voldemort. Harry stared. Not only was that the last answer he'd expected, but Lupin had said Voldemort's name. The only person Harry had ever heard to say the name aloud, apart from himself, was Professor Dumbledore. Clearly, I was wrong, said Lupin, still frowning at Harry, but I didn't think it was a good idea for Lord Voldemort to materialize in the staff room. I imagined that people would panic. I didn't think of Voldemort first, said Harry, honestly. But then I remembered those Dementors. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Rewind. Okay. I did think of Voldemort first, said Harry, honestly. But then I remembered those Dementors. I see, said Lupin thoughtfully. Well, well, I'm impressed. He smiled slightly at the look of surprise on Harry's face. That suggests that what you fear most of all is fear. Very wise, Harry. Harry didn't know what to say to that, so he drank some more tea. Yes, all we have to fear is fear itself. Remember that, children. Remember that. I always heard that quote my whole life, and I never really knew what it meant. It's one of those quotes you just are like, yeah, of course, yep, sure. But I feel like it can be taken two different ways. One, the scariest thing is always fear itself, because anytime that you face a fear, it's instantly less scary. I mean, even real scary moments, when you face them, you get through it. if you don't die. If you don't die, you survive, and then you're less afraid of the situation, and you're stronger and you're braver. So it's really the fear, the feeling of fear, that we're scared of the most. Because if we can deal with feeling that fear, we can really face anything. But another way to look at it is that the only thing we should fear is fear itself, meaning the truly most dangerous thing is a human who is afraid. Humans who are afraid make all sorts of bad decisions, and I feel like a lot of bad decisions that humanity has made as a whole have come out of people's fear. Whether it's a fear of them being out of control, a fear of them losing power or losing love. They're just afraid of something, and when they're afraid of something, a lot of times they make bad decisions. Like Voldemort. He's not a human, obviously. He's a terrible wizard guy, but he is clearly motivated by fear because he wants power. Why do you want power? The only reason someone wants power is because they're afraid of what will happen to them if they don't have power. They're afraid of losing control, which is seen very clearly when we learn about Voldemort's childhood in the future books and future TV series. So I won't go into detail here, but for example, like if you think about people from movies or just people and villains in general, like the Joker and other villains, if you hear their backstory, it's always a terrible backstory. It's almost always like they went through some terrible situation. It's not usually like somebody who had the perfect life and then they're like, let's become a villain for fun. No, usually it's like someone who had a terrible background and then they become a villain, and that's because of fear. They're afraid of all the bad things that happen to them happening to them again. So they just try to gain as much control as possible, maybe hurt other people to prevent themselves from being hurt again, and it's all motivated by fear. So that's why fear is what you should fear. All right. So you've been thinking that I didn't believe you capable of fighting the Boggart, said Lupin shrewdly. Well, yeah, said Harry. He suddenly felt a lot happier. Professor Lupin, you know the Dementors. He was interrupted by a knock on the door. Come in, called Lupin. The door opened and in came Snape. He was carrying a goblet, which was smoking faintly, and stopped at the sight of Harry, his black eyes narrowing. Just like this. Ah, Severus, said Lupin, smiling. Thanks very much. Could you leave it here on the desk for me? Snape set the smoking goblet down, his eyes wandering between Harry and Lupin. I was just showing Harry my Grindylow, said Lupin pleasantly, pointing at the tank. Fascinating, said Snape without looking at it. You should drink that directly, Lupin. Yes, I will, said Lupin. Here is a Grindylow. This is quite an amazing drawing here. Look at that. Look at that lovely creature. Beautiful. Beautiful, isn't she? She's a doll. Her name is Martha. She's gorgeous. I love her. You can't have her. She's mine. It kind of looks like that, you know what it looks like? It looks like one of those deep sea fish that have little danglies on their head to attract predators, and then they eat them with their big mouth, mixed with like creepy skeleton hands and gremlin arms and gremlin body and dragon snake lizard tail. Yeah, that's what it is. All right. It has a bunch of different words on here in case you're interested. Can go through some of them. Aquatic Wonders of Yorkshire, Grindylow, a Wizard's Field Guide. Among Yorkshire Grindylows, there is a surprising degree of physical variations, with small populations displaying distinct local traits. The famous Grindilo grip is an adaptation for holding fast, slippery prey items, such as fish or eels. Although long and strong, Grindilo fingers are brittle, and their grip is easy to break. Specimen found in Blubberhouse's Washburn Valley. The Grindilo lure is an adapted fleshy growth resembling a worm, which is, when moved, is irresistible to fish. When resting above the water's surface, the lure is known to attract birds, mammals, and occasionally curious children. Yeah, I told you, he's got a lure just like that fish in the deep sea. They go from egg to like a little tadpole guy. Look, this is their evolution, you guys. Can you see this? Let's get this closer. They evolve like a frog. They go from like egg to like tadpole to like fishy tadpole to like full-on fish to like fish with the arms to this. Ah. All right, development of the Grindilo, larva or gripe. This thin, wiggling fish-like creature has numerous local names. A polywiggle in Itzki, a candy pole in Kettlewell, and a Sheffield, and in Sheffield, a Jarvis. The adult Grindilo is camouflaged to resemble the pondweed in which it frequently hides. Pondweed. That's interesting. I've never heard of that. I guess that makes sense. It's seaweed, but it's in a pond. Ah, nice. Grindilo scat can often be found floating by the water margins. Well, that's gross. Scat means poop, for those of you who don't know. Poop. The Grindilo breathes underwater using gills, but possesses what would seem to be a rudimentary lung, which implies they were perhaps once a land-dwelling demon. All right, great. Grindilo eyes possess a nictitating, I don't know what that means. Some sort of science term, I think. Nictitating. What? Nictitating. I have no idea. Nictitating membrane, which is drawn across the eye while underwater. That means like a dragon's eye or whatever when it closes upwards. Creepy, huh? To help them cover from water. So like the gravity of the water doesn't pull their eye down, I guess. Or go up their eye when they dive. I don't know. It's helpful for reptiles and such. Yeah, science. The Grindilo is a pale green water demon found in still or stagnant water across Yorkshire. It has a reputation for ferocity and strength out of proportion to its size. Oh, just like Gimli. Gimli the Grindilo. In recent years, Grindilos have been found in urban environments, even in Porterbrook, in the heart of Sheffield, where they have taken to sheltering in submerged shopping trolleys and traffic cones. Well, that sounds lovely. All right. Now we're back with Lupin and Snape and Harry. I made an entire... Wait, sorry. I have to get into my Snape voice. I made an entire cauldron bowl, Snape continued. If you need more. I should probably take some again tomorrow. Thanks very much, Severus. Not at all, said Snape, but there was a look in his eye Harry didn't like. He backed out of the room, unsmiling and watchful. Harry looked curiously at the goblet. Lupin smiled. Professor Snape has been very kindly concocting a potion for me, he said. I've never been much of a potion brewer, and this one is particularly complex. He picked up the goblet and sniffed it. Pity sugar makes it useless, he added, taking a sip and shuddering. Why? Harry began. Lupin looked at him and answered the unfinished question. Yeah, it tastes gross, is what we're saying. I've been feeling a bit off color, he said. This potion is the only thing that helps. I'm very lucky to be working alongside Professor Snape. There aren't many wizards who are up to making it. Professor Lupin took another sip, and Harry had a mad urge to knock the goblet out of his hands. Professor Snape's very interested in the dark arts, he blurted out. Really? Said Lupin, looking only mildly interested as he took another gulp of potion. Some people reckon. Harry hesitated, then plunged recklessly on. Some people reckon he'd do anything to get the defense of the dark arts job. Lupin drained the goblet and pulled a face. Disgusting, he said. Well, Harry, I better get back to work. I'll see you at the feast later. Right, said Harry, putting his empty teacup down. The empty goblet was still smoking. Transition. Was it in reference to an eye? Yes. Another membrane that gives a second set of eyes. Oh, okay, cool. Very nice, very nice. All right. There you go, said Ron. We've got as much as we could carry. The shower of brilliantly colored sweets fell into Harry's lap. It was dusk, and Ron and Hermione had just turned up in the common room, pink-faced from the cold wind and looking as though they'd had the time of their lives. Thanks, said Harry, picking up a packet of tiny black pepper imps. What's Hogmeads like? Where did you go? By the sound of it, everywhere. Dervish and Bangs, the Wizarding Equipment Shop, Zonko's Joke Shop, into the Three Broomsticks for foaming mugs of hot butterbeer, and many places besides. Speaking of hot butterbeer, I happen to have some right here. It's actually a candle, but it smells like butterbeer. Delightful. Okay. All right, hot butterbeer. The post office, Harry. About 200 owls, all sitting on shelves, all color-coded depending on how fast you want your letter to go. Honeydukes have got a new kind of fudge. They were giving out free samples. There's a bit, look. We think we saw an ogre. Honestly, they got all sorts of the Three Brooms. That's clearly something Ron would say, right? How does Ron sound again? We think we saw an ogre. Honestly, they got all sorts of the Three Broomsticks. Wish we could have brought you some butterbeer. Really warms you up. What did you do? Said Hermione, looking anxious. Did you get any work done? No, he did not. What do you think, Hermione? What a stupid question. You silly girl. No, said Harry. Lupin made me a cup of tea in his office, and then Snape came in. He told them all about the goblet. Ron's mouth fell open. Lupin drank it, he gasped. Is he mad? Hermione checked her watch. We'd better go down, you know. The feast will be starting in 5 minutes. They hurried through the porthole and into the crowd, still discussing Snape. But if he, Hermione dropped her voice, glancing nervously around. If he was trying to poison Lupin, he wouldn't have done it in front of Harry. Yeah, maybe, said Harry as they reached the entrance hall and crossed into the Great Hall. It had been decorated with hundreds and hundreds of candle-filled pumpkins, a cloud of fluttering live bats, and many flaming orange streamers, which were swimming lazily across the stormy ceiling like a brilliant water snake. The food was delicious. Even Hermione and Ron, who were full to bursting with honeyduke sweets, managed second helpings of everything. Harry kept glancing at the staff table. Professor Lupin looked cheerful, and as well as he ever did. He was talking animatedly to tiny little Professor Flitwick and the charms just the charms teacher. Harry moved his eyes along the table to the place where Snape sat. Was he imagining it, or were Snape's eyes flickering towards Lupin more often than was natural? The feast finished with an entertainment provided by Hogwarts ghosts. They popped out of the walls and tables to do a spot of formation gliding. Nearly Headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, had great success with the reenactment of his own botched beheading. It had been such a good evening that Harry's good mood couldn't be even spoiled by Malfoy, who shouted through the crowd as they all left the hall, "The Dementors send their love, Potter!" Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed the rest of the Gryffindors along the usual path to Gryffindor Tower. But when they reached the corridor, which ended with the portrait of the fat lady, they found it jammed with students. "Why isn't anyone going in?" said Ron, curiously. Harry peered over the heads in front of him. The portrait seemed to be closed. "Let me through, please," came Percy's voice, and he came bustling importantly through the crowd. "What's the hold up here? You can't all have forgotten the password. Excuse me, I'm head boy." And then a silence fell over the crowd. From the front first, so that a chill seemed to spread down the corridor, they heard Percy say in a suddenly sharp voice, "Somebody get Professor Dumbledore, quick!" People's heads turned. Those at the back were standing on tiptoe. "What's going on?" said Ginny, who had just arrived. Next moment, Professor Dumbledore was there, sweeping towards the portrait. The Gryffindors squeezed together to let him through, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer to see what the trouble was. "Oh my!" Hermione exclaimed and grabbed Harry's arm. The fat lady had vanished from her portrait, which had been slashed so viciously that strips of canvas littered the floor. Great chunks of it had been torn away completely. Dumbledore took one quick look at the ruined painting and turned, his eyes somber, to see Professor McGonagall, Lupin, and Snape hurrying towards him. "We need to find her," said Dumbledore. "All right, Dumbledore." "We need to..." That is not how he sounds. Oh man, I really need to record myself doing each of these voices so I can remember how they sound, but let's see. "We need to find her." No, not quite that. It's he's like an old guy, sounds quite old, and he's an old wizard, and he sounds a little old like this, yes. Okay. "We need to find her," said Dumbledore. It wasn't that great, but whatever. Moving on. "Professor McGonagall, oh, he's still talking. Wait, we got more time to practice. Okay. "Professor McGonagall, please go to Mr. Filch at once and tell him to search every painting in the castle for the fat lady." "You'll be lucky, ha ha," said a cackling voice. It was Peeves the Poltergeist, bobbing over the crowd and looking delighted, as he always did, at the sight of wreckage or worry. "What do you mean, Peeves?" said Dumbledore calmly, and Peeves' grin faded a little. He didn't dare taunt Dumbledore. Instead, he adopted an oily voice that was no better than his cackle. "Ashamed, your headship, sir. Doesn't want to be seen. She's a horrible mess. Saw her running through the landscape up on the 4th floor, sir. Dodging between trees. Crying something dreadful," he said, happily. "Poor thing," he added, unconvincingly. "Did she say who did it?" said Dumbledore, quietly. "Oh, yes, Professor Head," said Peeves, with the air of one cradling a large bombshell in his arms. He got very angry when she wouldn't let him in, you see." Peeves flipped over and grinned at Dumbledore from between his own legs. "Nasty temper he's got. That Sirius Black." Ooh. The end of the chapter. There we go. You had to wait till the very last part of the chapter to get to the title, which was The Flight of the Fat Lady. Interesting, in the book, Peeves tells Dumbledore where the fat lady went and that it was Sirius Black, but in the movie, they just had the fat lady, they found her, or she returned or something, and then she said it was Sirius Black. Because they just took Peeves out completely from the movie, which is fine, because he's, like, a pretty annoying character, honestly. Oh, look, here's a picture of the post office with the alphabetical owls. So funny. There's even a frog in there, too. These are very cute. They're very cute. Look at that. They got a frog. Look at this. Such cute little owlies. They're so cute. There's a big one and little tiny ones. All kinds of owls. Owls are so cute. They're the cutest of all the owls. I can't reach this around very easily. Little red one. Okay. That one is eating something. It's a mouse! He's eating a mouse. All right. That is the end of chapter 8. And wow, what a chapter indeed. So Harry didn't get to go to Hogsmeade. Lavender Brown may have had a bad premonition come true about a rabbit. Ron and Hermione fought about Scabbers, and Crookshank's trying to eat Scabbers, and Scabbers is not well, and also Lupin is not well, but then he felt better after a potion that Snape gave him. Lots of curious things going on. Lots of curious things, and we got to see Harry and Lupin get to become a little bit closer. They got to know each other a little bit more, and that's nice. The next chapter is chapter 9, Grim Defeat. And look at that beautiful blue page there. Grim Defeat. Ooh, what could it be about? Guys, we're already on page 125 out of 326. Pretty good. Almost halfway there. Ooh, it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. Every week we'll get a little bit closer. All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed our Harry Potter stream for this evening. I hope that you'll come. We're gonna have another stream on Saturday. I'm trying to stream more often. It's just I don't really have very many free times in my schedule. I honestly just don't. I streamed today, actually. I'm trying to find more times I can stream, so I streamed today at my lunch break. And that was cool. But obviously that means I can't really, like, eat my lunch as effectively. So it's kind of a give and take sort of thing. But it's cool. I had a good time. Yeah. I don't know. I had a good time. You guys. That's a wrap. Let's go raid our good friend Adamisk. A friend of mine who is super cool and weird, like all of us, and also just a really nice person, a really nice, genuine human being who is just chatting, just as we are. We're playing the same game and just chatting. One of the greatest games in history. Every time there's always like one less viewer to raid than it says are watching. I don't know why. Maybe it counts me, and then when I raid it doesn't count me. I don't know. I guess I don't count as a human. Sad. This is very sad to me. Sad news. I don't count as a human. Anyway, Adamisk is awesome. Please say hi. Even if you don't end up watching the stream, just say hi and make a new friend, and then we will be back again. If I have a bonus stream, you might want to like check your notifications, I guess. Sometimes I'll post it on Twitter if I can, but I'm just trying to like stream at random times to see what would work for me. So just know that I might randomly stream at some random time, but I'll definitely stream on Saturday. So yeah, we'll see you guys then.
Speed tree.
Let's go say hi to Adamisk. Hello, sir. Oh, he's got a cute Cheshire cat emote. That is so cute.
Okay.
Hi. Raid.
And then if I go over to this.
Alright, goodbye guys. Have a great night. That is the end of our stream.